Welcome to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman, helping you unpack the economic headlines and providing real money solutions.
We're talking about money, the wealth gap, the Great Reset, central bank digital currency, Chinese efforts to displace the dollar, the overpriced stock market, and all the things that impact you on a daily basis. You know, Jesus told us in Luke 16:11, he said, you got to get the money part right first, and then you'll be trusted with true riches. Actually says, if you're not faithful with your unrighteous mammon, you will not be trusted with true riches. So here we're trying to help you get faithful with your giving, spending, and investing. The only three things you can do with your money: give, spend, or invest. You can't take it with you. It can't buy you health. It can't buy relationships, but it can do a lot of good things on the earth, and we want to help you do that. I've got with me Mike Carter, my colleague from the Economic War Room. Hey, Mike, welcome to Pirate Money.
Hey, it's great to be here. Pirate Money Radio. When you said, hey, can you help me kind of host this show? I was like, great, but Pirate Money. I know about the book. How do we come up with Pirate Money Radio?
Well, you know, when I was studying the history of the monetary policy of the United States, I found that the founders, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, those guys saw real money as gold and silver coins, and they were referring to a gold doubloon or a silver piece of eight, also known as the Spanish mill dollar. When I say to you, Mike, what do you think of with gold doubloons and pieces of eight? What do you think?
I think of pirates, I have to say.
Captain Jack Sparrow, that's right. You know who else was a pirate was John Paul Jones, the founder of the American Navy, to this day declared a pirate by the British naval authorities. So pirates helped us win the Revolutionary War, and they didn't believe in fake money. They didn't want unbacked paper money. They wanted gold doubloons and silver pieces of eight. That's how we got to pirate money.
Well, we certainly know that with some of the work that's going on with transactional gold and silver now. Are you going to talk about that on the show?
Oh, of course. In fact, you should talk about it. You've been out there talking to how many states are you working with?
We're up to 25 states right now that are looking at this, drafting legislation, or working it through their legislative process, and got probably 2 or 3 that have a shot at making it across the finish line this year.
Everybody should be interested in this. Just imagine if you could take real money, gold and silver, put it on deposit with a state authority, like the Texas Bullion Depository in Texas or a vault in one of these other states, and then they would account for it, and they would allocate it to you. That's real gold, real silver that you own, but that people would then be able to take a debit card and go spend that if they needed to spend it. They could save it, they could give it, spend it, or invest it. The 3 things you can do with real money.
Absolutely. And when we think of all the phone calls that we get from our show, people concerned about what do they do with their money. They see what's happening with the devaluation of the dollar, the loss of 87% since we got off that gold standard. They're saying, help me figure out how I can get this. When's Texas going to get it? What state's going to get it first? Those are all things that we're hearing from the public across all over the country. But we had a bill that was voted on, or a amendment that was voted, not an amendment,
proposal.
Help me out here, a proposal in the ballot this week. What did that
in
come
Texas,
out? Remember?
Yeah, 77% of those who voted on Super Tuesday in Texas voted in favor of the comptroller adding gold and silver and making it transactional. People want this. I mean, you had that experience. Tell me about that experience you had with the Uber driver.
Absolutely. I was in D.C. I was going from the hotel to the airport and just happened to mention to him that, hey, maybe next time I'm here, I'll be able to pay you in gold instead of dollars. Or actually, there's even a technology today that allows that to happen. And as we were talking, he was like, I can't believe this idea. This is in the Constitution, and the technology is here today for this to happen. By the time we got to the airport, he would not let me out of his car until I showed him an app and told him more about how this thing was going to work.
Yeah. What if you could hold your money in gold and silver, didn't lose value? I mean, our dollar since 1971 has lost almost 90% of its purchasing power. I remember as a kid, I'd go in, I could buy a Hershey bar for a dime. I could buy a Spider-Man comic for 15 cents, a cheeseburger, fries, and a McDonald's shake for $1. And, you know, I had enough money to pay a tithe. I could earn $1.60 cutting my dad's lawn. I'd pay 20 cents in tithe. $1.40 bought me my perfect Saturday afternoon. That same basket of Saturday afternoon perfection now costs almost a $20 bill.
Yeah, I remember my parents bought a new house around 1973. I think it was around $40,000 then, and that was probably just slightly above average. But a new house today, over $400,000. In gold, what's that equate to?
Oh, in gold, it's about the same price. The same ounces of gold then will buy, in 1971, when we left the gold standard, the price of gold was $35 an ounce. It's recently topped $2,100 an ounce. You can go to pricedingold.com and you can see the statistics of how gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. That's why real people, we talk to sophisticated, brilliant, smart people with lots of money, and you know what they say? They say, oh, I can buy gold now. It's easy. I can hedge against inflation and all this. You talk to the average person on the street. You talk to a waitress. You talk to a Uber driver. You talk to somebody that you meet at church and say, hey, what are you doing about the fact that we're adding $1 trillion a year in debt to the national debt every 100 days. 3 months' time, we add another $1 trillion. And that's only going to accelerate because of the nature of interest. It's exponential.
$1 trillion is a huge number. How do I get my head around that? What's that really mean?
If you add up all the debt from every credit card from every American and combine it, it's 1.08 trillion, according to a statistic I saw earlier this year. 1.08, so about $1 trillion is all the credit card debt of every American, and we're adding that to our national debt every 100 days.
Which explains why so many people are calling us after the show and saying, all right, how do we get transactional gold and silver in our state? When will this become available? Yeah,
well, the reason they're doing it is here. I've got the headline, open the books, $175.3 trillion doomsday clock is ticking. Why? Because that's how much we've promised to pay in Social Security and Medicare. If you're counting on that for your retirement, and we're not selling anything here. I'm not, people say, are you selling gold? No, we're telling people get gold and get silver and then make them transactional. The problem that we're facing is this debt spiral. So by the year 2050, my best estimate is that we'll have $150 trillion in debt as a nation. We'll be bankrupt. No wonder the World Economic Forum says by the year 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy. You'll be happy to be out of the debt associated with all the stuff you own.
One of the things I appreciate about the work that's happening at the Institute here, though, is we're not about fear, Kevin. It's about providing solutions. And what we are working with transactional gold and silver is a real solution. You want to just talk a little bit more about how it works?
Oh, yeah. All right. So when I was a kid in 1971, we left the gold standard. My dad was teaching the Constitution for the National Center for Constitutional Studies in Oklahoma. And he'd go around and talk about it. And there's this clause in Article 1, Section 10. It says, a state shall make nothing other than gold and silver coins tender in that state for payment of debts. So that's it. That's the only thing a state can do. And I read that and I was like, well, if the federal government has abandoned the use of gold when they left the gold standard under Nixon, then a state needs to pick it up and do that. But then I started wondering, how am I going to carry around a bag of gold coins or silver coins and buy stuff with it? You take a 1 ounce gold coin is worth $2,100 approximately right now. So you go in to buy your cup of coffee at the coffee shop and your coffee costs $2.50. Oh, let's be right. Your coffee costs $5. Yeah, because of inflation. You're paying $5. Are you going to shave off just some flecks of that gold coin to pay for it? No, you can't do that. Everything we do today is electronic in some form or fashion. My checking account, my debit cards, my credit cards, my spending. I can tap to pay with my watch. What is it? All the different things you can pay, Bitcoin, PayPal, Venmo, yes. Yeah. All of those things are electronic. What if you could just take that electronic capability and apply it to actual real gold and silver, and you could make that a monetary system, and you made it optional so people could choose to do that, or they can keep using their Federal Reserve notes and their paper money. If you did that, you'd have almost a perfect money supply.
It's literally making gold transactional. It's freeing gold up. You don't have to hide it anymore. You don't have to store it. You've got a place where you can actually use it, and it has potentially some other benefits, which we might be able to talk about in the next segment.
Oh, yeah. No. So transactional gold and silver is the reason we're doing pirate money. It's going to change the way people spend, give, and invest. This is one of the most powerful opportunities we have as Americans to take back America. All right. We're going to talk more about this after the break. This is probably the most exciting initiative anybody's thought of in the last, 20 years. We'll cover it back when we come back right after the break.
Welcome back to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman.
I'm here with Mike Carter, and we're looking at the usdebtclock.org. That's a free resource. You can go right on any browser and look up usdebtclock.org and get up to the minute what the U.S. national debt is. Mike, it looks like 34,488,500,000,000, 240, 250, 300, 400. It's just going
I
up.
wish you would stop predicting what it's going to be, because you keep being right on that as well. And it wasn't that long ago, wasn't it? We first started the show, I think 2018, wasn't it around 20, 21 trillion? And
economic
you were
war room. Yeah, no, we talked about it. Gosh, when I first talked in the Pentagon, 2008, when I was acting as Pentagon consultant on economic warfare, it was $10 trillion. We've gone up 3.5 times in the last 16 years.
Wow. And so what's your projection over the next 10 years?
Well, first off, let me point out, I wrote the book Pirate Money. We produced that book just in I wrote it in a couple of weeks, and it was out just a few weeks after that because we knew the timing was urgent. But it was released in early August of 2023. I quoted the usdebtclock.org then, and it was $32 trillion in overall federal debt. Today, it's $34.5 trillion. Think about that just for a second. We've increased our national debt $2.5 trillion just since last June.
Since last June, but now we're every 100 days adding a trillion?
That's right, every 100
if
days.
interest rates go up more, it's more?
Yeah.
How much per citizen?
It's $102,556,000 per citizen.
Wow.
$102,556 per citizen. When I wrote this book, it was $95,000 per citizen. So on a per person basis, it's gone up $7,000 just since June. That's why everybody says, well, the economy's not too terrible. Actually, the economy is horrifyingly bad, and it's being propped up by this massive production of debt and printing by the Federal Reserve.
We saw the last 3 months, we've seen consecutive inflation. And last I heard, I think we're on track to get another month of inflation here. Well,
inflation is going to come. It's going to ebb and flow. It always does. But the bottom line is that we've printed so much money. You know what the classic definition of inflation is? Too much money chasing too few goods. Unless we can produce goods and services as fast as the Fed can print money, we're going to have inflation.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've been feeling the effects of inflation, but then I look at the effects of that debt that's going up on top of that, and you think about the average family out there, what does that mean to them?
Well, people are wondering, what am I going to do with the money that I've got? Mm-hmm. First off, how do I just pay for the basic everyday needs? I've got kids going to school. I've got, washing machine breaks down. I've got a car payment. I've got a mobile phone payment. I've got all these different things that I've got to do. In fact, there are only 3 things you really can do with your money. You can give it, you can spend it, or you can invest it. Now, on Pirate Money Radio, we work to bring solutions that support all 3 of those areas in a way that promotes liberty, security, and values.
LSV.
Yes.
That's our LSV. You're the father of LSV investing.
Yeah, well, that's true because we believe in supporting liberty, security, and values. And thankfully, Patriot Mobile, a mobile phone company, they offer nationwide coverage on most platforms, including Apple, Android, and several others. Patriot Mobile supports the Pirate Money Radio program and others that are defending Judeo-Christian values. Now, you can get more information about both the Economic War Room, which is our show, Mike, and Patriot Mobile, available at patriotmoneyradio.com. patriotmoneyradio.com, and put a /AFR for American Family Radio.
All right, Patriot Mobile. I just saw something on, I had the phone thing, the AT&T the other day. We had what was supposedly a cyber attack on that, or have you heard any news on what was going on with that?
We don't really know. They say that they updated something and it threw everything off. That's what they always say when remember when the stock market had a glitch a few years ago and they had a flash crash? Yep. It was a bad update, they said, which just shows how vulnerable that we are in this age in which we live. We're in an economic war. We have the show Economic War Room. You can get that at economicwarroom.com. But we're in an economic war. Russia, China, radical Islamists, North Korea, they all have intent of taking America down. I think too few Americans are aware of the threat that we're facing there.
Yeah, we can't live without our cell phones for sure. And what that was like just to see that go down for a temporary time was, I think, an eye-opener for many folks. Good to have people like Patriot Mobile that are working to keep it private and secure. And it'll be interesting to see where things go with other things that are coming up out here on CBDCs and things like that.
Yeah, well, we're in an economic cold war with China. There's no doubt. It's about to get hot. And that's just not my conjecture. This is the Star in the opinion section. The global economic cold war with China will have a ripple effect on your savings. That came out of the Star just March 1st, actually. So the Star is a UK newspaper. I study a lot of international newspapers to see what they're saying. We're not being told that we're in an economic war with China. It doesn't fit the narrative of this administration. You know, the administration that has seen a lot of money thrown. You look at some of the things that have happened with family members of the administration. A lot of money has come into that. But China has been working diligently to displace the dollar, to offer their version of a central bank digital currency called a digital yuan. And literally, they're wanting to use it to bully the world to fall in line with Chinese policies.
And that digital yuan, are they doing anything with gold with that?
Oh, yeah. They claim they're backing it with gold, which, sounds really good until you realize that the gold belongs to the state. It doesn't belong to you as the individual. So, yeah, but that's a part of a larger movement. Every major nation of the world is moving to an all-digital currency, central bank. 120 nations, I think, according to the International Monetary Fund, have some form of central bank digital currency that they're creating.
And with that, social credit scores?
Oh, yeah. That's in China, social credit scores. Here, it's going to be your ESG score. How good are you with the environment? Do you meet their criteria for social justice? Or are you good at governance, which means if you've got a company, do you hire enough people that fit the rainbow? And when I say the rainbow, I don't mean a diversity of thought or ideas. I mean, you have certain people from certain genders, certain backgrounds racially, certain people who think that they are a different gender than they actually were born as.
And let's go back to solutions, because as I said at the beginning, we're not about fear, we're about solutions. So if I don't want to take on CBDC, transactional gold and silver becomes a solution?
Yo, absolutely. That's why we wrote the book, Pirate Money. You can get a copy at piratemoneybook.com. Go there and you'll read. It's very simple. It's constitutional. It's biblical. God invented gold and silver as money. That's not a human invention. It's in the Bible, Genesis to Revelation. Gold is formed when two neutron stars collide. It's a very special, rare element. You can't replicate it easily. There's no alchemy here. So gold and silver's always historically been money. It's only been the past 100 years or so when gold was confiscated in 1933 by FDR, it's only been since then that we've separated gold from being money.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of having that, we talked social credit scores, we talked a little bit about CBDC, but when I hear the World Economic Forum out there saying you will own nothing and be happy, or you will eat bugs and like it, I can tell you I'm pretty much a meat guy. I'm not going to be able to eat bugs and like it. So I want to have my transactional gold card backed by the state of Texas where I can go out and still get my steak.
Yeah, no, and you, Mike, you've been doing the real heavy lifting, talking to legislators in 25 states, talking to state treasurers. We've been together in the capitals of Oklahoma, Louisiana, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Iowa.
Road trips.
Yeah, big road trips. This is probably the most exciting initiative we've done. It's why we have Pirate Money Radio, to tell people about that. Hey, be a pirate. Don't accept paper money as the end-all, be-all. Look at alternatives. Look at what the Bible says. Look what the Constitution says. Start adopting transactional gold and silver as what it is. It's money.
Absolutely, and it's money that's stable, that holds its value, unlike the fiat currency we're seeing out there.
Yeah, there's no question. So we started the segment looking at usdebtclock.org, and then you look 34.5, 34.6, 34.7. It's just rolling. It's just racing all the time. All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about other solutions and other problems. There are real ones economically. What do you do with an overpriced stock market? We'll have more after the break. You know, President Biden issued an executive order, number 14067, on March 9th of 2022. We warned you about it, both before it happened and after it was issued. It's 37 pages long. Now, I've highlighted a few sections to read to you. It starts off, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, it is hereby ordered as follows. Yeah, by the Constitution. Section 1, policy. It has profound implications for the protection of consumers, data privacy, security, financial stability. Being sold to you is something really good for you. Goes on and talks about human rights, financial inclusion, equity, energy demand, and climate change. We're seeing the progressivism coming through here. It lists objectives. It lists mitigating illicit finance and national security risks. And remember, the greatest national security risk may be patriot-loving Americans, as Biden has said in other speeches. We must reinforce the United States leadership. This is really a plan or a plot to take control of the global monetary system using central bank digital currencies. In front of me, I also have 6 major research reports written to support or encourage central bank digital currency, also known as CBDC. Here's one from the Office of Science and Technology Policy from September 22. Also, the Federal Reserve Fed's notes on programmable money. Programmable money? June 23rd, 2021. The Bank for International Settlements, March 2018. The Atlantic Council CBDC tracker from December 22. The IMF's FinTech notes and the Federal Reserve Board of Governors report from January 22. And all of these, they're all very favorable. They say this is the destiny of central banks. If they say 20 nations are planning to test launch central bank digital currency in 2023. I also have 2 reports warning against CBDC. One is from the Cato Institute, titled CBDC and Freedom Are Incompatible, and the other is from Bitcoin Policy Institute, Why the U.S. Should Reject CBDCs. Now, the Fed in New York is now proceeding in a 12-week test of programmable digital dollars with Mellon Bank, Citibank, HSBC, MasterCard, PNC Bank, the SWIFT protocol, TD Bank, Truist, US Bank, and Wells Fargo. They're also working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. The Fed wants first mover advantage. In fact, they said it flat out in a paper they wrote on November 25th, 2022. It's being sold to us as central bank digital currency. It is literally electronic money made up out of thin air that the government can control. And with it, they can control everything you buy, everything you sell. They can monitor you. They can limit where you transact.
Pirate Money Radio, helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
And I'm here with Mike Carter, who is my colleague. Mike, you and I have been friends for a very long time, going back to the 1980s.
It's making me feel old.
Well, you are old. So,
thanks.
But so am I. Hey, here's the amazing thing, though, is we came together. I mean, when I got hired by the Pentagon in 2008 to explain what was happening in the stock market crash, and what we found was it was economic warfare. There was clear and convincing evidence that Vladimir Putin in Russia, the sovereign wealth funds and the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East and others were trying to take down our stock market, take advantage of some real weaknesses that we have in the way we handle stocks and bonds and securities. Everybody thinks in their head that when you invest in a stock, you own that stock. But do you ever see the stock certificate? When I was a kid, people got their certificates mailed to them, and they'd put them in a safety deposit box. My mom kept hers out. She bought shares of Disney, and it had all these cute cartoon characters on it, so she held on to it. But you don't see those anymore, right?
No, you don't. In fact, we just had David Webb on the show, and that was frightening.
Yeah. David Webb, who wrote The Great Taking, there's a documentary about it. Economic War Room, you can get it at economicwarroom.com. This is our weekly show. It's on Blaze Television. It's also offered just free for anybody who signs up. You can get our free economic battle plans. Go to economicwarroom.com and sign up for the free battle plan. And week after week, we've got interesting guests. And we just did record the episode with David Webb on The Great Taking, and he pointed out that you don't own the stock certificates that you think you own. They're not really yours. They're actually collateral for a debt for somebody else. And he gave the analogy. He said, could you imagine you walked into an auto dealership, you bought a car and you paid cash for it. You drive it off the lot, you think it's yours, and a couple of years later, somebody comes and repossesses it. And you said, you can't repossess this. This is mine. I bought it. And they say, no, it was collateralized for a loan to the auto dealer who just went bankrupt. We're taking it. And everybody says, oh my gosh, they're going to come take my car. And he says, no, it's not about cars. This is about your stocks and your bonds and your financial assets. And he said, but that's the reality. You can look up in the law. And he read the law to us. It's very scary.
So you will own nothing and be happy.
Yeah, well, you'll only be happy if they tell you that the economy's collapsed, you're not going to eat today, there's no meat left, and even if you want to buy bugs to eat, you're going to have to adopt central bank digital currency. It's all almost like it's according to plan.
You know, that's which is another great book of yours, Kevin. But let's back up a little bit and talk about economic war room, because we built the war room for an audience like this, and we've had it for we have 280 episodes out right now. We wanted a war room where people could go to for truth and for factual information on what's going on geopolitically, what are the real national security threats, and then having a prudent plan of how do they prepare for those things. There's a difference between that prepper and being prepared. And I think what we try and do on that show every week is make sure that people understand how to be prepared and develop these solutions that hopefully stop a lot of this from ever even happening.
Yeah, well, when I started this work, our enemies were foreign, almost exclusively, that we were at least seeing. Now we have as many enemies domestic as a part of the World Economic Forum, as a part of the globalist movement and so forth, where they've weaponized money against us. For example, if you try and buy something and they don't like it, well, let's say you go into a gun shop and you're using your credit card. They see that, they code it, and they could cut you off if they wanted to. They could kick you out of your bank. Our friend Nick Vujicic, probably the most sympathetic man on planet Earth, a guy born without arms and legs. He was debanked. And I know Saturday Night Live makes fun and says there's no such thing as debanking. No, it's a real thing. People like Sam Brownback, former ambassador, former senator, people like Nigel Farage, who led the Brexit movement in England, people like Nick Vujicic, who've just lost their bank account because they didn't fit what the bank executives like. So it's weaponizing money against real people. We're in an economic war, both foreign, and that's real. China, Russia, Muslim Brotherhood, etc. They're waging economic war, but also domestic, where you see Bud Light, goes ultra woke. Well, that's fine. You can just stop drinking their beer. But what if your bank kicks you out of banking?
That's a serious problem.
Yeah, no, and that's what we're facing. That's why we created Pirate Money. That's why we created the Economic War Room, to help real people with real issues. We try and take the bad, good, beautiful approach. I know Clint Eastwood, good, bad, ugly. I met Clint a few times in Carmel when I was living there. Really, really nice guy. But he always ends with ugly, bad, good, bad, ugly. I want to end with beautiful. So we flipped it up a bit. And that's what our show does.
Yeah. It hits those solutions. And Kevin, you've been doing this for years now, kind of seeing what's coming on over the horizon geopolitically, what the threats are. You started warning D.C. about the China threat back in late, 2008, 2009?
Oh, yeah.
What happened in 2008, and the response there was very eye-opening, at least to me, as you walk that Capitol. And with important factual information, and Republicans and Democrats asked you two questions. What were those?
Yeah, they asked me how much money and how many people. How much money do you have and how many people do you have? And I said, look, I'm doing something for the good of America. We're fighting an economic war. And I saw that Washington is not our solution. People are looking to the national politicians as a solution. You might get a win there and you get your candidate in and they do a few good things. We're going to have to go to the states, and then we're going to have to go to the individuals. And this is where I think it really matters. We open the show with Luke 16:11. If you're not faithful with your unrighteous money, you will never be trusted with true riches. Well, the average person, not in any one of the three areas, three things you can do with your money: give, spend, or invest, not any one of them is being truly faithful. So we need to get people to be faithful. That's why we created the National Security Investment Consultant Institute, NSIC Institute, and where we're trying to help financial advisors help their clients be faithful in their giving, spending, and investing.
Absolutely. And that's where that LSV investing came from. At the time, we were warning about ESG, and that was when people still didn't know what that ESG was. Now we're seeing even, I think you had some headline articles there where ESG has fallen out of favor. We've woken people up out there, and BlackRock and so forth are saying, hey, we need to call this something different or take a different approach now.
Yeah, no, they're rebranding it because they're still supporting it. If you ever wondered why when you go to a Disney movie that there's always characters and storylines that are unacceptable for your family, and you wonder, why would they do this? The reason they do it is because of that S in ESG, where Disney has promised that they're going to have a gay character or a gay theme through every program that they emit. Now, they've created some really, really bad stuff where they're talking about spawn of the devil and the Antichrist and all this, where they're putting that, packaging it in a children's cartoon. And they've been doing that for quite some time, just under the radar. Now they're getting over the radar because it gets them a higher ESG score.
But ESG, isn't there a new term they're using now?
Yeah, the BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are the largest managers of assets in the world, really. And what they're doing is they're calling it now transition investing.
Wait a second, transition. How did that work for Bud Light? Transition, wasn't that a transition investment?
Yeah, well, Bud Light is trying to put a trans character selling beer, and that didn't work very well with their audience. But what they mean by transition is transitioning to a green new economy or to a decent new society. So that it's really repackaging ESG. This is a domestic economic war, and America is most certainly in an economic war, and we've been there for some time. One of our supporters is Patriot Mobile. They're on the front line. They're helping patriots weaponize their spending to preserve our liberty. Patriot Mobile offers nationwide coverage on platforms such as AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and has U.S.-based tech support. In addition to supporting this radio program, they also support the ministries of Alliance Defending Freedom, Concerned Women for America, and many others. More information about Patriot Mobile and the Economic War Room is available at piratemoneyradio.com/AFR. That's piratemoneyradio.com/AFR.
You know, that's pretty cool. The money that I pay towards a phone bill is going towards values that I believe in. I don't think that's happening with the other carriers out there.
Yeah, well, that's the exciting thing about Patriot Mobile. I full disclosure, I'm on the board of Patriot Mobile. I'm a shareholder in it. They're a sponsor of this program, but they really do offer good service. The people that I know talk to them are happy with them, and I don't want any of my spending to be weaponized against the values. I want it to be helping kids, not hurting them. And there's that Bible verse that scares me silly. It would be better to have a millstone tied around your neck and be tossed into the sea than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. And when I look with my investments, I wonder, am I investing in something that's causing a little one to stumble?
Yeah. Not something that any of us want to think about. And so many people in their pension plans, their IRAs and so forth, are doing that and not realizing it.
Oh, yeah. They're supporting electric vehicles, for example. They're hypocrites. They don't realize this. Here's a headline, Daily Mail, from March 4th. Electric cars release more toxic emissions than gas-powered vehicles and are worse for the environment, finds shock report. The bottom line is EVs weigh 30% more than gas cars. They cause tires to wear out faster. The tire tread releases toxic particles 400 times greater than exhaust emissions. Now, we're not even counting what happens when you strip mine the lithium to make those cars operate. They claim to be wise.
But they can do that with slave labor. Isn't that what they're doing for the lithium? That's what I read last.
Oh, in China, too. And they're making China rich and hurting American manufacturing. Yeah, claiming to become wise, they became fools. What we're doing is we're ignoring the truth of God's word, the simple, logical things that we know and understand, and we're selling out for economic reasons. God's not going to be pleased with that.
Yeah.
So what we've got to do is we've got to look at everything that we're doing. That's what Pirate Money Radio can help you do, to look at your giving, spending, and investing. Now, it's one thing to be passive. You need to be active. And active, by that I mean weaponizing your money to support your values. Money doesn't buy you salvation. It can't buy you relationships. It can't buy you health. It can buy healthcare. It can buy everything else. But it's useful. You can give it and help people. You can spend it and grow good businesses, and you can invest it and make returns. That's what Pirate Money Radio is here for. We're going to cover in our final segment, we're going to cover more of these solutions to the economic problems we face. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
Pirate Money Radio, helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, our goal here is to help real people with real economic challenges. I mean, we live in a very difficult, challenging environment. You know, I just saw Bank of America just said how exciting they are, and they said just ignore the fact that we're at egregious valuations. Just throw your money into the stock market. It's an exciting time. And then I see Jamie Dimon, who leads a competitive bank, JP Morgan Chase, and he says, you know, it always feels really good before it crashes. And so people don't know, what do I do with my money? I mean, Mike, we get calls, you know, we've been doing Economic War Room for 5 years. We get calls all the time. Please help me. What do I do with my money?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's no silver bullet in what to do with your money. But what I appreciate most, Kevin, is the approach that you take, not only developing solutions that are real, that are right, and helping advisors develop the game plan that's right for their customers, but, you know, taking that, you know, what's true treasure really mean out there? You want to talk just a little bit about that kind of war of the heart you're seeing across America right now?
Yeah, well, first, I wrote the book Game Plan 10 years ago, and Game Plan was how to protect yourself from the coming cyber economic collapse. And people looked at me and was like, well, what are you talking about? Now they're desperate.
Cyber was hardly even talked about back then.
It wasn't, and yet I just saw American Express got hacked. So
Yes.
We're in an economic war, and it's challenging. But what we talk about is the economic war of the heart. First, you got to get your attitude right about money. And this is going to be the subject of my next book, titled The Economic War of the Heart. And Jesus said it best, just Genesis to Revelation, money is a tool. Money is not a goal. And I think that's, you stop there and you just say, money is a tool. It's something I can use. It's not something I'm seeking to obtain for its own self. You know, the rich fool in the Bible, he stacked up all his money and he says, I'm going to tear down my barns and build bigger barns. And you fool, this night your life is required of you. No, this is something you can use to buy liberty, security, and values. Really, you can use your money to help bring people. And people are worried about their money, right?
They are. And what they'll say after that is, but Kevin, I really want to protect what I have. And while we offer those types of solutions, we also bring new innovative ideas that not about overregulation or scarcity, but developing new technologies and new ideas that can make that happen. We got, 10 different solutions we're working in the Economic War Room right now.
Oh, yeah, they're exciting. And people want to know, how do I protect my money? How do I protect my money? And I look at them and I'll say, that's the wrong question. I mean, we live in a gun-toting state. Texas is known for a lot of things. Gun-toting is one of them. Nobody's ever stopped me and said, hey, Kevin, how do I protect my gun? I mean, that's kind of a dumb question, right? Yeah. You don't protect your gun. Your gun is supposed to be used to protect you. And you shouldn't be worried about protecting your money. You should be worried about how do you use your money to protect you. So money's a tool. It's a weapon. It's something that we can use. And people are worried because they're going to lose it in this rough economy. And we hopefully have answers of places people can give, spend, and invest that'll make a difference.
We do. And in fact, if they have financial advisors, we are kicking off this year. We've had the NSIC Institute. We've been training advisors through Liberty University, but we're kicking off the Institute itself Or if you have a financial advisor, they'll have an opportunity to come out to Liberty Hawk Ranch, be part of the NSIC Institute, get regular updates on what you see happening geopolitically and what that means from an investor perspective and what types of things we can do out there. And then just a time to really work together with other thought leaders to develop what are the solutions that are right for geopolitical stuff that's happening around the country today.
Yeah, so whether we're talking about the rolling national debt at usdebtclock.org, it just rolls, or we're talking about Chinese cyber attacks, or we're talking about the stock market, whether it's overvalued or undervalued, all of these things deal with money. And people are worried about what do I do with my money, and that's why we have Pirate Money Radio.
Yeah. One of the things that I had a client call me up the other day, not a client, a person that a viewer that watches Economic War Room. And because of this fear, they're getting bad advice, or they're panicking a little bit. And they had someone that wanted them to buy all gold, but they weren't supposed to tell their financial advisor until they actually did that, because their financial advisor would tell them not to do that.
Yeah, we do the opposite here. We tell people, go to your financial. There's no way we can give financial advice or investment advice we have no idea who you are. You're listening to the program, but I don't know your background. It would be a violation of professional ethics for us to give financial advice. So we say, go find a financial advisor and get them. And if your financial advisor doesn't know anything about the things we talk about, send them to us and we'll help educate them and make it possible for them to help you. But it's not just, it is financial. And one of the biggest financial impacts of the past decade was COVID. Mm-hmm. And I was just with Charlie Kirk at AmFest not long ago, and a woman came up who was a viewer of our show, and she said, I just want to thank you. You saved our family.
Yeah. Tell me a little more. How did that happen? Now, I know you're a CFA. I know you're a top-notch investment analyst and all these things out there, but you're a doctor too now?
No. And it's, Economic War Room is some of the most brilliant people, whether it's Dr. Ben Carson, who is a real doctor.
Yes, he is.
He doesn't just play one on television, and brilliant people have come to the Economic War Room. But it wasn't medical advice that we provided. It was just practical preparedness advice. Mm-hmm. And this lady had watched our episodes early on. We warned about COVID before anyone else. I believed it was released from a biolab in China, accidentally or on purpose, I don't know. But it was going to have a real economic impact. At the time, we said 20 trillion in debt will quickly go to 30 trillion in debt. Of course, it did. We said there'll be a run on toilet paper and masks and all of that, and that was true as well. And we said it's going to have the following impacts, and we laid out the impacts.
Yes, it did.
And this lady followed our battle plan. We have an economic battle plan with every episode. She followed our battle plan. She said, I stocked up on the essential things I needed to stock up. We were prepared. We were the only house on the block that was prepared. And she said, you literally saved our family.
Yeah. Kevin, you had a book, I think it was done in 2014, Game Plan, How to Protect Yourself from the Coming Cyber Economic Attack. And in there, you laid out some scenarios, whether it's inflationary or deflationary. But what's amazing to me is how timeless that book is, because we can look at that book now, and as we start to look at what's happened inflationary, you've got that listed in Game Plan. This could be one of the scenarios, and these are the types of steps you would need to take or want to get with your financial advisor on to work through the best game plan for them.
Yeah, and we go beyond just the money. We talked about personal preparedness and so forth. Here's end of February, Blaze Media put out how to tell if you're experiencing a cyber attack, an EMP, or a solar flare, and that was based on the fact that the AT&T cell service went down, and people thought, is this an EMP, a cyber attack, or solar flare? You respond to each of those uniquely and differently depending on what kind of attack it was, and that was the purpose of game plan. I mean, you don't go into a football game. A coach doesn't say we're going to run every play. He doesn't say we're going to run the first play, pass the second, run the third. If we get a first down, run the fourth. He doesn't do that. What a coach says is, here's our game plan. If they do this, we'll do this. If you see this, then do this. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what game plan. That's what Economic War Room is. We're helping people with the game plan.
And that's what the NSIC Institute will be for those financial advisors that want to become part of the Institute here. They'll be able to participate in some of those sessions together, work together on those real-world solutions, and then help each of their clients come up with the game plan that's best for them. Because as you said, that's different for every person that's out there. But there are solutions. There's no silver bullet. But what's encouraging is I think the big picture approach that you take when you look at investments every day here.
Yeah, no, and that's why we have an economic war room. That's why we have Pirate Money Radio. This is an opportunity for us to take information and knowledge and thoughts from the best and the brightest in the world, whether it's David Webb or we've had Glenn Beck, we've had Nigel Farage and Senator Jim DeMint, so many phenomenal guests, Michelle Bachmann and others, and to put them in one place where it's not just a one-stop shop. I come there and I get my financial advice and I leave. Instead, it is a continuing dialogue with the best and the brightest people that we can learn from. So when you see something like in Newsweek, U.S. to sell off entire Northeast gasoline supply reserve, and you think, what are the implications for me? What's that going to do for my family? What's it going to do to gas prices? Why are they doing this? Is this being done to promote all electric fleets, which I think it is? Is it being used?
We know those work really well in ice cold winter Northeast weather too, right? Those electric cars?
Exactly. Or is it being used so we can reduce the debt, so we can pay for more spending? Or is it used so we can write off student loans, so we can buy votes for a campaign? All of these are money connected, everything. And so here we've created this opportunity. You can go to economicwarroom.com and you can get a full education. You can watch all 280 episodes. You can download the economic battle plans. You can pick your topic. I want to learn about the World Health Organization, or I want to learn about investing in Chinese stocks, or whatever. You pick the idea, go watch a quick show on it, read the battle plan, and then you're prepared. But then you can also contribute back. This is our opportunity for us collectively as an audience to really do mountain-moving things like pirate money. Pirate money is going to change the economic landscape of America. It's going to take us back to the Constitution. It's going to make it possible for us to have sound money on a personal basis, at the personal level, where you can make gold and silver transactional again. And when you go to buy that book at the local bookstore, you say, would you rather I pay you in dollars or gold or silver? I guarantee you they're going to want gold and silver if they know that they can then spend it and we can create a whole economy around it.
Absolutely. And Kevin, one of the things that I appreciate about the NSIC Institute, Economic War Room, Liberty Hawk Ranch, all the different assets that we have here, is this is not about selling a newsletter. We're not about trying to say, okay, this is the end of the world, end of America, buy this newsletter and, we'll give you the 3 key things you got to do, because those are designed to just kind of hype people up and create the fear. We're about providing those real solutions, and we want everybody to be a part of Economic War Room, understand what's going on, and then develop their best game plan.
We're seeing a revolution in money. It's like nothing in my lifetime or any listener's lifetime, the changes that are coming, because we've had a very stable Federal Reserve money, but we're seeing a revolution. It's not that different from the American Revolution. And you know who helped win the American Revolution? Pirates. Be a pirate. Join the pirate money revolution. Get more information at piratemoneyradio.com. Stay tuned. Come back and see us next week. This is the revolution that will make a difference in all of our lives. Collectively, we can take back America and take it to godly principles once again. Join us at piratemoneyradio.com.